Hey everybody, this is Steve Garner, brewer at Garner Brewery. Thought I'd walk you through some of the steps of brewing one of our famous brews here. This time we've picked JontheInternational. This is actually the inaugural brewing of this particular beer. We'll have to tweak a few things as we go along, but here's kind of how we do things. Starts off with this particular recipe has about 10 pounds of grain to end up with approximately 5 gallons of beer. In this we have the base grain is called Maris Otter. It is a premium British base malt. All of that will end up in this device, the mash water tun. Yeah, I know it looks like an igloo cooler. There's a reason for that. This is the main part of it. This is where we will be drawing out the extracted sugar. The way we start things off is by putting a little bit of mash water in at the bottom. That's the bottom of our mash tun. We have a false bottom there so that the grain stays up, and we can draw the water out from below it. Here we are starting to add our dry grains. I said about 10 pounds. So going into this recipe, and this is the time that you start to smell these grains. There they are. And they smell great, especially when you get to this step. This is where we are adding our mash water. We have to bring it up to a specific temperature to convert the starches into sugars. The particular temperature we're looking for here is somewhere in the neighborhood of about 152 or so, and we're adding water in a specific ratio here. We want to get it to about, let's see, for this one I think we did 1.125 quarts per pound, I believe, is what we ended up with. I'll have to look at my notes to make sure. But here's where that one is going in, mixing with those grains, and of course we will mix them around to make sure there aren't any air pockets or dry spots there. As soon as that goes in, we start measuring the temperature to see if we're getting close to our target range. That's getting up there pretty close. One of the problems we have with this particular beer is it needs to have a few additions to offset this problem here. You see that is obviously a higher pH than 6.2 there. Ideally, we want that about at a 5.2, 3, 4, 5, somewhere in there. So yeah, this is pretty hard water for this particular recipe. Okay, so here we're getting into the yeast side of things. This is White Labs Irish Ale Yeast WLP004 for those of y'all playing at home. Yeast is something that can make or break your beer in more than one way. Of course, if it's not a quality yeast, then you may not get a good fermentation. However, picking the right yeast, matching it to the right recipe can make all the difference in the world between a good beer and a great beer. To help the yeast along, we've got yeast nutrient, just some things that yeast can use to propagate, be a little bit stronger, make sure we have a better fermentation. And another sort of underused technique, I think, by some home brewers is making a yeast starter. And this is a Erlenmeyer flask that we'll use to do that. This is a sanitation step here, making sure everything's nice and sanitized, sanitizing that Erlenmeyer flask right there. What a yeast starter is well, basically this. We're making a mini batch of beer is what it is to. This is about a 2200, 2250, somewhere around there. A little bit large of a starter for this particular beer. Anyway, what happens is you boil this wort, and it's usually at around a 1040 specific gravity or so, starting gravity. Boil that until you're happy with things, and once you do that, you cool it, pitch your yeast into that, let it get rolling and bubbling and moving around, throw that into your batch of beer, and you get a quicker start to your fermentation, which certainly helps protect against wild yeast and bacteria that we don't want in there. But also, generally speaking, leads to a better flavor. This is one of the problems with an Erlenmeyer flask. Not really a problem, but one thing that can happen as you're boiling here in a rather enclosed space is you get all these bubbles. So we have begun to use this product here, Firmcap S. It's amazing to watch. You take one drop of this, drop it in that starter, and you don't have any problems with those bubbles or boiling over or anything. So anyway, while that is doing its thing in the starter, we're still working with the mash here. The regiment for the mash is about 150. I think it ended up being 155 for about an hour. We checked for starch conversion, and we had complete conversion. That probably happened about 30-40 minutes into the mash procedure, but every little bit counts. This is checking some calculations on my phone. I've got an app that does just about every calculation that we could possibly use. And this brings us to, well, actually what I was just calculating. I'm looking at our hot liquor tank here. This is where we're going to heat up more water that we'll pour into that mash tun. This is the stage of things that we call sparging. When we drain the wort out of the mash tun, there's still a lot of those converted sugars that, well, basically just get stuck in the grain bed, so we need to wash them out. So we'll add rather hot water, you can see, to that, and that sort of locks in those sugars and washes them through. Once we get to that point, we start draining. This is draining the wort out of the mash. As we are draining the wort out, you can see a little bit of grain collected there. That's why we use a strainer. And then, of course, the main ingredient for this particular one is Kenyan coffee. You can check the website to see the background story of that. This particular coffee is really it's really an aromatic coffee. Really good taste, really smooth, pretty yummy stuff. That brings us to the boil. We do a full wort boil, which means that our entire batch is boiled at the same time. That's slightly different from what some brewers use, which is brewing a smaller batch and then diluting it with distilled water or whatnot. And that boils for about an hour, and you add your hops to that at specific times. That changes for almost all of our recipes, and for the hour Well, all you can do is pretty much sit there and wonder what it's going to turn out like, and hope for the best. That's all for the John the International. We'll see you again with another recipe. Bye.